photography allows us to do some of the coolest shit we probably never thought of, you know? We've gotten to go amazing places. We've gotten to be part of different groups of people and communities that we probably didn't know existed or had access to at some point, you know? And so it's fun to kind of float between those worlds.
December 31st, 2014, like that was my last day of work. And then January 1st, 2015, like full-time photographer. And then here we are, you know, almost like 10 plus years later. Like I love taking photos. Like I have, you know, if I could just do this and not have to worry about making an income, I'd still shoot as many weddings as I do now for the most part.
Let me introduce the one and the only Jordan Vothm. If you don't know him, he's been like a very inspirational photographer for me. For even from when I started, when I used to live in San Francisco, he's living in Seattle, and you should take a look about his work because it's like he's one of the. I think if you think about wedding photographer, you are one of the top. You know, the one is being there, the one super professional, the one that is very consistent with his job. So that's why, like, I have millions of questions for you. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm really curious. You know, I was reading about you, Jordan, and I learned that you were once an accountant. Would you mind sharing how you went from accountancy to photography? Because I come from a similar background. I was an electrical engineer for probably 10, 12 years. At some point I said, see you later, fuck this. And I'm curious if there's similarities or overlap in our story there.
Yeah, you know, photography for me was always a hobby. Like I really picked it up, like started to shoot more and more like during college. So at that point it wasn't like, oh, this is going to be my career path or whatever. You know, I had originally picked my college that I went to for forensics. That had a pretty good forensics program. Did some chemistry classes, was like, this is not what I want to do, you know, for forever. So switched to business and took an accounting class and was like, yeah, this is, you know, I like math. I like accounting. It came pretty easily to me. So, stuck with that and then just, you know, went through I think in call areas in Washington State, to get like your CPA license. Because at the time I assumed I would want to be a CPA. You have to have 5 years of college. So I went to college for 5 years, which was nice because it kind of gave me a little bit of extra time to kind of, you know, just dabble in photography throughout that entire 5 years. And by the end of it was mostly just shooting like, you know, fashion, lifestyle, like work with models, like had no interest in weddings or shooting with couples, anything like that. But yeah, just graduated. And then, you know, pretty soon after that, got a job with a company in Seattle. And it was like a nationwide company, but we were based in Seattle. So like I worked like at the home office. Um, and I like thoroughly enjoyed it for the most part. Like it was actually a really like easy, like all things considered, it was a pretty easy job and pretty chill job. Like it wasn't your typical, like you got to wear a suit to work every day or anything like that. Like you could wear, you know, pretty casual clothes, which made it much more comfortable and stuff like that. Um, and that was kind of around the time where I started to get into weddings. So it was really cool because my manager was very, very chill. And I mean, I credit her a lot for letting me take on so much work while I was working, where if I wanted to go take a trip and fly out somewhere for a few days, like she would let me take, because I only had so much paid time off. So she would let me take off a good amount of unpaid time off. And since I was getting paid for weddings as well, it was like it didn't really matter at that point. But yeah, she let me take on like a lot of jobs that like I would have had a really hard time saying no to. Like it would have been a huge bummer to miss out on that stuff. Um, and so yeah, so she was like a huge help in that aspect. And then, you know, I mean, we were like into my second year, just a couple months, and there was an announcement that we were going to be bought out and we were going to be merging with another company based in the Midwest. And it was quite a shock to a lot of people in our office because we were the company that was buying a lot of smaller companies up that entire time. So it kind of came out of nowhere. And they gave us 10 months of notice that we were going to be laid off. And so that was kind of my like well, this might be the time to, try out photography and just kind of see how it goes. I was going to get us, all things considered, small severance package, but it was going to be useful because basically December 31st, 2014, like that was my last day of work. And then January 1st, 2015, like full-time photographer. And then here we are, almost like 10 plus years later. And, it's been going, there's been some weird, obviously with COVID halfway through there, like that was definitely weird, but it's been, great ever since then. So
Did you ever consider when you're going through that thought process, do you ever consider, am I making the right decision or am I making the wrong decision? Like, especially when your firm was getting bought out.
yeah, it was really, at that second year, I was definitely getting like, I had a little bit more of like that bigger snowball of clients that was slowly kind of starting to build. So I felt like maybe, with having 10 months of notice, and with honestly, with the last 3 months of the year, like we had already like, transitioned everything on our end over. So I was just going to work and just editing on my laptop, and at work. So it was like, I had a lot of time to prepare for it. So I felt pretty confident. But I kind of in my mind was like, if this doesn't work for a year or two, like I can just go back to
Yeah.
accounting and, no big deal. Um, and yeah, I just kind of every year got a little bit busier and like a little bit more travel and that kind of stuff. And then just kind of, yeah, it was, yeah, just kind of got crazy from there on out. So it's been consistent ever since.
I have a question about do you feel like I feel like the mind of an accountant and the mind of a wedding photographer, they're very different mind, probably because like
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know anything. I hate math and numbers, like, but you, I can see you being like being such a creative person. So do you feel like you switch like from math to art, or you brought some sort, or you using in your in wedding photography work something of the accountant person that is on you?
Yeah, I definitely think that like, I feel like I have a pretty strong creative side, but I definitely think like maybe the technical stuff is more my strong suit
Mm.
and like where I can thrive even better. So I think like where maybe a lot of photographers, like a lot of like the top tier photographers just have like a super strong, just creative sense of everything. Like that might be where I struggle, I think, the most in trying to like stay creative and stay, just, yeah, coming up with new stuff. But like the technical stuff to me comes a lot easier, I think, because of like that, just like math,
Math.
that side of the brain is just a little bit maybe different. So, but it is quite their career change. Whenever I tell clients like, oh yeah, I used to do, accounting way back when, they're like, oh, that is a
Ye-
weird, like what a weird
So
transition.
fascinating. Like I love it. Do you do accounting for yourself?
No, I did for this like the first bit, but it just got to the point where it's like, all right, this is getting too complex. And like the rules change every so often. And you're like, all right, if you're not keeping up with it, like good luck. So I thankfully have my own.
It's funny hearing you talk about being a technical photographer because when I look at Lily, she's the exact opposite. She's a very emotional and creative photographer, and then somehow the hands and the mind connect to use this tool. So you talk about being a technical photographer. What kind of limitations or what kind of pros and cons does that give you? Do you struggle with the creative part at all? And then how do you how do you force yourself to be creative? Is there a process you go through? Or is it just my mind being technical and I can do whatever I want, then it was limitations?
Yeah, I think, I really haven't even thought too much about that until like just like this conversation now, which is really funny. And I think that, but I do recognize that like in terms of like settings and just like knowing kind of settings to use in certain situations, like that comes very easily to me. And like I can adapt pretty quickly between different, scenarios of like if you're shooting indoors and all of a sudden you go outdoors, there's like, just like sun going in and out of clouds and you have different, exposures and stuff like that. I can kind of switch between that stuff pretty like immediately for the most part. And that's always been super easy on my end. And like for the creative stuff, I think just like I definitely noticed it towards the end of the year when I kind of have been shooting for quite a bit of time that like I'm getting a little bit of that burnout and um, I'm trying to not do the same thing over and over again with each couple or stuff like that. Um, Little side note, at my accounting job, that's where I met my wife at. And so we both got laid off together. Like we started dating like kind of right when things ended there. And so she was kind of going through the same thing, like trying to find a new job and kind of figure out like what she wanted to do on her end of things. And um, she ended up getting another just, corporate kind of ish job, and kind of saw like how I was following like my passion and my dreams and stuff. And kind of, I think, that kind of sparked her interest in trying to figure out like what she truly want to do. So she came to me with an idea like, way back when, where she wanted to like curate a space, like a clothing space. So about like, we're coming up on 9 years, we opened up like a retail store together. So in our neighborhood in Seattle, we have like a men's and women's clothing boutique that has like home goods, apothecary, stuff like that. Um, and that's her full-time job. I kind of just help out with like photos and, accounting type stuff like that, kind of the back end of things. So to tie it into the wedding stuff, I think shooting kind of like that, like lifestyle, like fashion type of like lookbook stuff mixed with shooting wedding stuff. It's always been like I'm shooting something different here and there. So I feel like I'm never getting stuck shooting the same thing over and over again. So I think that has definitely also helped with staying creative, is just like being able to shoot different stuff and not having to just shoot weddings constantly or engagements constantly. It's like now I'm doing like maternity a bunch, family stuff a bunch for old clients and stuff like that. So I think that part in itself just really helps the creative process. It kind of keeps you from just kind of burning out on shooting one thing over and over again.
I think this is very fascinating for me. Like for me, like if a maternity shoot come over, especially with the child, I go like, what do I do? I don't know. I
Yeah. Oh,
freeze
yeah.
because like the mind is trained on doing weddings, the photography mind, and like,
Yep.
okay, I have to deal with the kids, and like how do I pose them? Like, do you pose them? Do you
Yep.
create scene? Do you direct?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's almost like a little bit of directing, and like, just kind of letting them just kind of interact, and almost taking like the wedding day approach in terms of just like kind of letting things just happen, and then just, capturing it as it happens. But, for the longest time, I was like, I will do maternity, or, for a long time, I didn't want to do maternity sessions. I thought they were always like super cheesy,
Yes,
until like I kind of realized, okay, I can shoot them how I want to shoot them. It doesn't have to
yes.
be super cheesy. Um, but then it was like, okay, well, I'll do maternity sessions, but I'm never doing family sessions. Like, I don't want to deal with kids and like
Mm-hmm.
do that sort of stuff. And then it was like, all right, well, now I have like some of my couples who I've just like shot with over the years that now have kids. And like, well, I'm not going to say no to them. And then I start doing that, and it's like, oh, that's not so bad. And so now it's just gotten to the point where now I'm like shooting like, I mostly do mini sessions with
Okay.
families, because I don't want to spend like give up too much time towards family sessions where it's like, well, just one evening for one
Mm.
family. So usually it's like just like a bunch of families in one night, little bits of time, because you really don't need like more than half an hour with a
Oh
family. Like,
wow.
kids only last so long. So
Okay.
it's usually pretty quick
Okay.
sessions. So
I love it.
some will do longer, but generally for me, it's like they're
Okay.
just short
In and out.
sessions.
But
Yeah.
you like when I see wedding, when I see maternity, when I see family from you, I immediately understand that they're yours, they're your photos. So bravo to be able to put everything under your brand. It's you, it's not just the
Thank you.
maternity in the studio, or is
Yeah.
outdoor, is you, is I don't know, you should teach some of us how you able to create this unique brand that can be wedding but can be maternity or family. I think family is so difficult.
Yeah. It definitely that's been like I think the main like area where I've tried to like kind of really focus and like, just like getting better at that aspect of things, because it is like I'll see photos and it seems so effortless in like other people, but then when I come to a family shoot, I'm just like, oh man, it's like chaos. But it definitely varies. It varies family to family, and like, sometimes kids just are having a bad day, and that's just the way it is. And certain ages are easier than others, so you kind of just roll with it. But yeah, like, so yeah, it's hit or miss sometimes, but so far it's been pretty. I've had pretty good experiences.
I'd love to touch on something you talked about a bit earlier, is that you said your wife, and you kind of have you have the retail store as well. What's it like having a dual creative household? You don't have I would use the word, not with the full intention, the security of the corporate job, but now that you both are created, you kind of live in this space where you're much more responsible for your own future than maybe you were previously, how is it to create a household? Because we're in the same situation. We both work together, which is even more levels of complication and amazingness. So, like, how is it to create a household?
I mean, overall, it's really good. I don't think it's like, I mean, it's great for us because like we're able to kind of like, obviously, as you guys know, you can kind of dictate your own schedule. And it's like, for me, before she opened the store, it was like my weekends were usually like that's when I'm shooting weddings. So it's like that would be her free time. So we were missing each other on that part. Um, so now, like, we set our weekends as like Monday, Tuesdays is kind of like our like weekend
Hmm.
time for the most part. So yeah, it always has been, it seems like where one is thriving, one is maybe having the stressful part. And so it's always been, thankfully, like kind of like they're never at the same time, like I guess both stressful. It's always like just one is stressful at certain times. So, um, but yeah, I mean, health insurance for, stuff like that has been like, definitely different being self-employed. And then you got to think about like your own retirement stuff because no one else is thinking about that for you. Like it's just yourself. So there's been like and there's definitely some like cons in terms of like maybe just more stress to think about like, or like, I guess stress on yourself to make sure that you think about the things because no one else is doing it for you. But the positives far outweigh it with like just flexibility, freedom to kind of do whatever you want. Like you have full creative control over, both sides of the business and stuff like that. So, and then we even, within our retail store, the room that I'm in right now is like a little like 100 square foot, little tiny little space that my wife has opened up with our other friend. And so it's a little natural wine bottle shop. So she has like
Ah,
two businesses and I have my photo business and I'm like half, part with her on the retail store. So within our household, we have, I guess, like three,
wow.
two and a half or three businesses. So, yeah, so it definitely keeps things interesting. And I mean, there's always something to work on for sure.
And that's the secret for a happy marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. You won't get any stress from that stuff.
I love the idea. Which day you say that you have it? Like, what are your weekends?
We take off like Monday, Tuesday, like
Monday,
that's when we're
Tuesday.
at home
Love it.
usually. Yeah, she was supposed to be in Chicago today for like a trade show for the
Oh,
store, but we've been dealing with some snow lately, and so she didn't actually end up making it there. So she's gonna do some other stuff today. But yeah, so usually it's just Monday, Tuesday, we're just kind of hanging out at home and doing our normal, which is nice because when stuff is busy on the weekends, we're getting the slow time and not having to deal with the crowds. So
absolutely. Oh, this is great.
yeah.
Have you found that the Monday, Tuesday um, either expands your networks or kind of closes them in? Because you're kind of an opposite schedule from the rest of the world. How has that been with relationships and friends and family?
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, I mean, like some of our closest friends that we like hang out with day to day is like they're like a part of the shop or like so our shop manager at the store is my wife's best friend, and then her partner is who owns the bottle shop with my wife. So like
Family.
we're all together for the most part, yeah. And so I mean, I think we definitely there's times where it's like family stuff you miss out on here and there because of like the weekends being taken up and stuff like that. But um, my wife is from upstate New York, so we, for her stuff, like we just try to make trips out there to see her folks and stuff every like, few months or something like that, as much as we can. I try to book work out there if possible, which so far has been pretty doable for the most part. But um, yeah, it hasn't. I don't think it's been like too tough. A lot of I mean, at this point now, like so much of our friends like come from the store in some forms, with it being having just been such a long time. So, now it's just kind of a normal. Like we're so used to it, like this 8+ years in. So it's been pretty good at that point.
How important is that community in all these things you have going on? Like, you have so many different projects and businesses. Um, how important is that community to what you do?
I mean, a lot. I think like one of my really good friends, like I've gotten into running with him. So I mean, we do like we've been running marathons like the last couple of years, and
Ooh.
so like that's kind of like my outlet from just work because I can work nonstop. Like I have no problem. I mean, this to me is not even really work 'cause it's just so fun and like it's what I truly enjoy. So it's hard to like, feel like I have to turn it off at certain points, because I can just do it whenever. Um, but yeah, I think just having like just other people to talk to that are, I mean, it's fun to have people to talk to that are not in the
Yes.
same creative space as you, but then it also is nice to have people in the same creative space. Like after I chat with you guys, I'm just gonna go meet up with another photographer friend of mine and have coffee. And it's just nice to kind of sometimes like chat through ideas and like stuff like that. 'Cause I don't, on my day to day, I do not talk to like that many photographers. So there's not a lot of like photographer talk going on in my household by any means, or like even just with like friends and stuff. Most of my immediate friends in like the Seattle area are not photographers, so it's nice to kind of have like that
Hmm.
different aspects of the different communities that kind of you get to kind of fill your cup in different ways.
I have a question. So, like, you enjoy so much this job, right? Wedding photography,
Yeah,
and I think that's how we're able to do this. Like, we don't think about it. It is a work. We love it. We just go for it.
yeah,
Let's have fun. But there is some time, especially towards the end of the year, that we're like, oh my God, how can I do that? I don't feel like I have the same energy as May, but I want to have the same energy as May for my couple,
yeah.
even if it's October. How do you keep yourself energetic when you're tired and you get this time that you burn out? You go like, you know, I have to do it anyway.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, like, I know a lot of people have like the like quote unquote wedding hangover after shooting a wedding and stuff like that. And I don't really like, I don't feel any different after shooting a wedding. I think a lot of that comes from just like the run, like being into running and stuff like that. Like my, just like body is capable of doing a lot of like that is to me very strenuous. So like shooting a wedding is like, it's difficult and like, it's exhausting. For me, it's more mentally exhausting, if
Okay.
anything. I think because you're thinking about
Yeah.
just so much stuff and maybe because of like the creative side being a little bit more intense on my end for, trying to just think of
Yes.
stuff that like I think just by the end of the night, I'm just, a couple of like, hey, come hang out with us and like stay and have a drink and whatever. And I'm like, I just want to go,
Yeah.
go sleep at this point. Um, but yeah, so I think that has helped a ton. I think just trying to, being a little bit selective as,
Yeah.
what you're booking and making sure it's aligning with what you want to shoot. Like, if because I live in Washington, I love shooting in the desert because that's not the type of like landscape that is readily available to me. So, um, a lot of my like fall and winter shoots are like, California,
Yes.
Arizona, Utah, like places where like in the summertime it might not be as fun because it is like so hot. So I try to, book more of that stuff in the fall, kind of towards the end of the year. And I think that's the stuff that gets me really excited to shoot. So if I know that I have like some really fun stuff to shoot towards the end of the year, I think that kind of helps just keep me energized and stuff like that. I, I'm sure maybe with you too, like with the traveling, like the traveling gets,
Yes.
pretty old by the end of the year. So I have learned throughout the years, like, oh, don't take a giant, like,
Mm,
Europe or somewhere else trip at the end of the year when you're already going to be pretty like burnt
yes.
out. Cause the last thing you need is like a 12 or 10-hour flight to like kind of go through. So I know that like towards the end of the year, I try to keep things closer to home, just like short flights, that kind of thing, just to make it easier. Because yeah, I've done the sometimes like not smart, ideas that I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do that. That sounds fun. And then it comes to it, and you're just like, why did I do this to
Yeah.
myself?
We like no makes sense. It is smart. Like right now, after all this experience, to go like, okay, it's May. I will book everything, all the destination as possible by October,
Yeah.
and October come, and you go like, I think it's good to do when you begin, like get out, burn out, understand that
Yep.
what does it mean traveling 10 hours for a wedding of 2 days wedding, and
Yep.
you need to be to take a next flight to go back home to photograph another wedding. And once you do and you have the
Yeah.
experience, you go like, okay, now I know I did it. And being local for you, it means that you can travel also to Utah, Arizona, and all these beautiful places. So
Oh
they're
yeah, yeah.
bad.
Oh yeah. I mean, like so many American photographers are like, oh, I want to go to Europe. I want to go to, Australia, New
Yes.
Zealand, like Iceland, like all these like really crazy destinations, which, don't get me wrong, are absolutely incredible places. But, the United States also has like a lot of cool places where you don't have to travel like
Yes.
nearly as much and you could still be shooting in some really epic like scenery that I'm sure places that you guys would want to come shoot at as well if it were
Yes,
more readily available. It wasn't just a crazy, long
for
flight and
sure.
travel experience. So, I've the last like mm, 2 or 3 years, and just especially with getting older, like I love being at home more so now more than ever. I feel like so I don't really take on as many international trips unless it is like
Wow.
well paying and exactly what I want to shoot. Something like yeah. So I'm not like offering yeah I'll shoot for travel
I
or
shoot for free
whatever
if you get married in
I'll
Greece.
shoot a free. Yeah, like no, 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 no. That is long gone.
There is a max. There is a like a wedding, the number. Like, oh wait, let me rephrase it to English. Switch from Italian to English. There is a maximum number of wedding that you book per year, or you go with the flow and see like, okay,
Yeah, I go with the flow for the most part. I never like put a
okay,
hard stop on like, oh, I'm done. I mean, like, I definitely learned my lesson. Even just this last year in September, I had 8 weddings, which for me is like, and some of those were elopements, so like it wasn't terrible, but it definitely I'm learning my lesson where like the editing part was definitely pretty burdensome afterwards, and trying to keep up. So it was like and I don't know if it's been the same for you, but obviously the post-COVID, like backlog of all these weddings that we had to shoot
yes,
that got postponed, like that was super crazy. And then last year I thought was going to be like a little bit slower, and like that, and ended up being really busy. And then I thought this year was also going to be slow, and so far it's been like pretty decent. But it does like seem like there is a little bit of a shift right
yeah,
now with like, it doesn't seem as busy as it has been in years past, but I also know that things just, I think, are booking a lot less, or a lot less in advance. So like more just like last minute type things. But so yeah, we'll see if it happens again this year. But yeah, I try to just keep it to what in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that seems
yeah.
reasonable. And just kind of use that intuition, I guess.
I wonder if like I feel like I talk with a lot of photographers. Everybody we agree that this year's kind of was slower. I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
have a question for both of you, Vic and Jordan. Like, do you think that maybe is what is going on in the world, like this new election of the president or the war or like this everything that is happening right now? It goes like
Yeah.
impact. I say wedding because we work in a wedding, in general economy, but also the decision of our couple, where they get married, how much is the budget, like what is going on?
Yeah, I mean, at least I think for, couples in America, like I think you have to kind of maybe hold back on spending a little bit because you really don't know what stuff is gonna cost, a month from now, 2 months from now, 6 months from now. So it's like I'm seeing like budgets are lower. It seems like I feel like I've never had a problem with like booking like normal rates, and I have a lot more couples now who are like looking at like slower like or like lower photo budgets and just lower budgets in general for weddings. I definitely have had a lot more like intimate weddings where it's like maybe just like 50 people or less than that. Um, Not as many like 200 plus guest weddings. So I think there's definitely just a lot of there was uncertainty last year with it being an election year, and now that it's done, I think there's still uncertainty with just how things are going to go and everything. And so it's just like, you're just kind of riding the wave, hoping it goes well, but you just never know.
Weddings are always a bit of a luxury item. You can always do smaller weddings. And so when you can get your dream destination, you can get your planner if you have one, you get your dream floral team, your dream photographer. Um, that was the norm for a long time. And a little bit of uncertainty in the world, maybe you start to pull back where you had the flexibility or freedom before. Um, it's just uncertainty. Are economic times worse than they were before? it's cyclical. It goes up and down. That there's a bust and a boom, if you will. There have been a lot of new players that have come in, and marketing and how we get in front of people keeps changing constantly. So if you don't stay up to date with that, sometimes you can get kind of left behind over the course of time. But again, if you build a timeless brand and you have your space, your niche, and you know your people and what they want, that's how you ride it out. But uncertainty always impacts everyone. If you don't know what's going on, it's hard to make plans for the future, and it's hard to make plans for the future. You try to hold on to what you have. It's like a first instinct.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so true. And like, it's hopefully people, I mean, yeah, I think like, at least for like us, it's like, the photo aspect of things, like that's going to be one of the things that people will always, I think,
Yeah.
want when it comes to like a wedding. Like, you can do it pretty like bare bones, but you're going to probably want photos in some capacity. So I think, we have that going for us. But yeah, I think just across the industry, I've been hearing from other vendors as well that like non-photographers that it has been like a little bit of a slower-ish kind of start to the year.
How do you
Or
feel about
maybe
that?
let's say inquiries, the inquiries that are coming, but they have much less budget. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I
noticeable.
think it's even, yeah, it's definitely like I feel like I've never had so much like pushback before with like pricing and just being, oh, we love your work, but just not like it's not within our budget right now, yada yada. And like
Yes.
I feel like now more than ever, like I have the portfolio behind everything, but it's just like it's just like couples having a little bit of a harder time and just kind of I think venues, it's like venues are still going to keep their same prices for the most part. So it's like
Yeah.
if you're spending a lot on your venue, it's like, well,
Yes.
you got to cut back somewhere else. So it might just be less florals, a lower budget photographer, no videographer.
No
I'm sure videographers
videographer.
are feeling
Like
it.
it happened a
I've
lot.
been seeing
Yeah,
that more
me
often.
too.
I was going to say, with all that uncertainty, all the things you just mentioned, does there lie some opportunity if you're willing to pivot or meet that gap in the market? Like you mentioned, if couples are hiring videographers, as often as they are, is that now an opportunity to include some sort of video or to partner with someone to potentially open up those services that where they still want the service, but now they're saving a bit because they don't have to hire two vendors?
Yeah, I have like a couple of videographers that I am like pretty good friends with. Like especially, I mean, one in particular, he does photo and video, so he's like my go-to second shooter if I need a second shooter. So he's someone where he will, and because I mean, at this point now, like he's kind of pivoted to where like he does has other means of income and stuff as well. So photo video stuff is not like his prior or like main reliance of income now. So he can sometimes take on lower budget jobs. Like if it's with me, like he's like, yeah, I can be flexible with pricing and kind of like come down to like what they might be needing to spend for that stuff. Like, so I have like kind of worked with a couple of videographers that are more flexible, like when it comes to that, where it's like we can we're not booked together still per se, but like we kind of are like together where I'm like, if you can hire them, they can kind of make this pricing kind of work with you guys and stuff like that. So I have noticed that a little bit more than normal, but yeah, at the same time, it's like it's been just kind of less videographers, and then like I know the content creators are getting
Yeah.
big right now, but I haven't really worked with that many of those either. It's been like just a handful of like, and it's obvious when one happens. Like it's definitely like the high end weddings, like those are always gonna, for the most part, they can fit them in that budget, but any like smaller wedding, because I think I also kind of shoot a large variety of weddings where it's like I've shot backyard DIY stuff and like elopements and intimate weddings, and then high end luxury weddings as well. So it's definitely noticeable what the different shifts are like within the different kind of budgets and stuff like that.
You mentioned a lot of different types of weddings you photograph. You said the high end luxury, do it yourself, backyard, and elopements. Is there a wedding type you kind of navigate towards as a brand? How do you incorporate all those different profiles of work, even with maternity and families, under one brand? A lot of times you'll get the advice, different work, different website, different brand. How do you manage it all under the same Jordan Voth name?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think there's definitely some ways where if I'll take it on and like I know that this is not going to be like maybe one that ends up being shared on my website or whatever. And I am so behind on blogging anyways that like there's so much stuff I need to put on it. I'm not very, even if I wanted to share everything, there's no way I would be able to do that. Um, so a lot of it's just like still like, there's always, you can pretty much always share like a few photos from every wedding, but maybe the full day isn't exactly what your like brand might be. So, I try to just post the full weddings where like that kind of aligns more with what I consistently want to shoot. Which for me, like I tend to gravitate more, especially nowadays, like more towards like the intimate weddings where it's like you still have your like close friends and family there, but like it's just not maybe like in a super crowded, 100, 200 people. It's kind of nice. I think everyone just kind of there's more time for the couple to kind of really interact with everyone, and I think it's a lot more like intentional time and not just very quick like, hey, how you doing? Congrats. Like and they just move on to the next person. So um I think you get like a lot more just like fun, candid stuff when it's like those really tight knit weddings that are a lot just more intimate and stuff like that. And then I also love the elopement aspect where it's like just a couple because you have just the freedom to do absolutely whatever you want, and you can kind of do like these more obscure, unique ideas because you're not having to worry about, can your aunt and uncles and grandparents like also walk out to this like ceremony location, or do we have to worry about you guys? So kind of a mix between those, and throw in the high end luxury stuff is really fun. Like I think to like have every now and then as well, and maybe a little bit more stressful because there's just like so much to photograph in terms of like just even the details and stuff like that. Can be kind of like its own job. So I've gotten better at learning over the years, like when I need a second photographer, if I ever need a third photographer, like stuff like that. Um, I feel like I've been hearing even more sometimes from other like, or like from like the people or the photographers who like only shoot high end weddings, where it's like sometimes they have like 4 or 5 photographers I've heard sometimes, which I think is like wild. But I guess like when you really need to shoot so many different aspects of the day, like that can make it easier for sure.
Do you think wedding photography has an expiry date?
I don't know. I think if anything, the expiration date would be related to like traveling type stuff. So I think it would be like, oh, okay, I'm done taking international work or whatever. Um, it's also just even the stress of just like getting your gear to, further away destinations. And like, maybe it's like airline, you're not used to traveling. And so there's different restrictions and stuff like that. I fly primarily the same airline here all the time. So it's like, I'm very used to like, just that whole experience. So, and I mean, I think it would be either like my body being like, all right, it's game over. Like you're not going to do 8, 10 hour wedding days anymore. But I think if I'm capable of doing it, like I mentally and like, the desire is there to like continue to shoot. Like I love taking photos. Like I have, if I could just do this and not have to worry about making an income, I'd still shoot as many weddings as I do now for the most part. Because I just enjoy it so much.
The attention spans are so short nowadays. So you got to have that impactful content really quick. We're all guilty of like sitting there at bedtime, like scroll next. We all can get caught in that loop so easily. That's what it's designed to do. And so, but it's such a, like Lily said it so well. Like these kids are smart, man. They figure out something on social media, and I'm like, holy shit! Like they figured out the formula. Like we've got to catch up to them now because that's the currency of the world. Like that attention is there. And it's so fascinating to be humbled like that.
Oh, 100%. Like, it is wild to see some of like these like younger photographers who like have done really well with like making reels and just like, and just shooting like really, just really fun like stuff that I like never, like you don't see very often. Like they're just like blowing up, And I'm like, okay, I need to like step things up a little bit and not just like, you definitely get sucked into like shooting the same thing over again and trying to just like shoot it somehow differently. But you're just so used to shooting it so much that you're like, all right, well, this is what I do and this is what you're used to doing. But trying to get different angles that you haven't gotten before and like all that sort of stuff.
It's really fascinating. Lily went on a journey last year to really understand and figure out social media. And, once we break it down, and we know our biggest barrier is we didn't have a system for it. And it made it fucking impossible to sit down and record this and do that, have a script, have a hook, put it together. It was just impossible to manage because it was never ending. There was always like the loose end we're trying to pick up. But once we put in together a system and a workflow, it became so much more manageable, and we're able to scale it and really study and spend quality time at it without going crazy. And that was such a big change from the previous years. And we can see the difference just because you can do it at scale now. We're not struggling with that one piece of content, and like having someone help us film stuff is such a relief because we could do it, but we suck at it and it takes 8 times as long, or we could have one guy come over and come put it together, So making that small investment saved us so much time and effort and allowed us to spend more time to understand like what is the better performing content, what is stuff people want to see, instead of just, hey, we need to put together a reel because I haven't done one yet and this guy put out 5. We're doing it together a bit more intentional rather than reacting to something.
Yeah, that's the nice thing is sometimes with the store, like we get a lot of like, summer college kids who like want to come like, work part-time. And so they're the ones I need to reach out to, like, hey, do you want another side business of just making reels and stuff and putting content together?
It 100% should be, but I think it's going to, because you have so much experience and knowledge already, you've been doing this for such a long time. You built such a brand, and now it's just a different way to talk about it. Like when Instagram came out, happened like 10, 12 years ago, Jesus, like things took forever ago. The reason why you two did so well is because you took that new platform and you used it to your advantage, like if you go way back when 5, 10 years ago, you still awesome content, both of you. Right. And using that platform for the pictures is what propelled you forward because you're one of the first adopters. And so I feel like it's the same way now with the new iteration of social media and video. It's still early, every day that goes by is like the new most busy day of social media. Right. It's not that people are walking away by the millions, like people are using it more and more. It's news, it's information, it's AI, it's everything. It's like only progressing and becoming more integrated into our lives. It's like the sooner we learn again, like the new, like social media, like the sooner we can have, I think, that we can have bigger, more successful businesses because we're just learning the new platform, just like we did with Instagram, and then with carousels, then with stories. It's a bit different. It's a different skill set. And it seems like the young generation has no problem being on video. Like they're able to do it like in a heartbeat. So we got to get over this fear of it because otherwise you get turn into your parents, Like I already look old enough as it is. Like I'm going to turn into my dad physically and mentally. I don't want like that. Is that what I want in my future? Like, no, do the opposite.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy just like how much, and I even think about like, I'm like, all right, I'm like scrolling in bed at night, like scrolling through TikTok. And I'm just like, all these videos, like you're seeing it for a split second. And then like, and just knowing that the work behind that just is gone in a, I scrolled to now I'm like, all right, what's the next video I need to see? And like, that's always been like I think what I've internally told myself, well, you don't need to worry about it because like, really it's like all that work for just like, it's like you put that out and then it's like, all right, the next day, all right, you got to come up with another one and do something else. But yeah, it's like, work with other people and, have someone else who like is better at it than I am do it. And yeah, I think that'll be like really successful.
It is the currency right now. Like that attention, if you can grab it just a bit, it becomes easier than you think over time. Like I was the biggest opponent of it. And Lily's like, shut the fuck up and get back to work. Like learn that, like do that, like in the nicest way possible. It's like, hey, do not miss this opportunity again. We caught it the first time. Let's not lose it the second time. I think again, you're able to do it at any point. It's just, you need to have your story. Like you need to be as cheesy or corny as it sounds, like you have to be yourself, because it's so particular and unique when you really sit down and dive into it. And people are interested in that, especially for someone who's been doing it such a long time in such a unique way as yourself. Like just showing us that bit of you, I think people would generally appreciate.
Yeah. Sometimes, and I don't know if you get to feel the same way sometimes, but I feel like, I've felt this way even for like, there's not really, workshops aren't as popular as they were, back in like 2018, 2019. It's more just like, if anything, it's like content retreats or something like, or like styled shoot type things now more so. But I always even had like the difficult like thought in my mind of like nothing I have to say is actually that interesting. Like, what am I could, there people already know composition, know, settings and stuff like that. So I'm like, what am I actually gonna say that's like gonna be so useful to people and stuff like that? I think that's just like, but then I'll hear other people talk. I'm like, well, that's really interesting. Like, I never thought about it that way. I'm like, well, that could be, same for me as well. Like if I was talking to someone else. So I think just even getting over like that, that's always been my like main thing of like, I just think I don't really have a whole lot to say, even though I do feel like I have a lot to say, but like, is it actually worthwhile? I have no idea, but maybe it is. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a giant mind game. That is for sure.
So this is me going, oh, it's too expensive. We don't want to do that. And now it's like, oh, we should have done that already. Like we should have both had these by now.
That's smart. That's smart. Yeah. Cause, I still shoot on like, SLRs. I've been like kind of integrating more mirrorless stuff, but I mostly shoot on SLRs. So, you're shooting through a viewfinder the entire time. So it's like, sometimes I'm like, I don't think the glasses will necessarily work for that part of it. Like, you kind of have to shoot live view the entire time. And that's even a whole nother ball game of like like the younger crowd who is like so good at just shooting live view. Like I hate shooting live view. I'm getting more used to it when I shoot mirrorless stuff, but there's just something about looking through a viewfinder that feels more comforting almost. But yeah, that's even like a huge shift.
Yeah, it's funny. So like right now, Lily is we have a baby girl on the way in April, and so it shifted our. Thank you. It's going to completely change everything 1,000,000%, and we'll process that at some point. But it's forced us to think differently and plan differently and prepare differently. And so it's like, okay, do I want to be spending my time photographing everywhere all the time, and then it takes away time from family at home because our job is it can be very hectic and mobile. So we're making a very deliberate decision to slow down. And that means also scaling up the other part of our business, the education and the social part of it. And we see just that need now for that great content, So it's almost like we take weddings, so we have content for our courses and our social media. So it's really a complete shift on how we approach weddings to make them more long-term, because that content is just king for everything. It's a long-term asset we can build upon. And we do such unique, cool weddings. Like it's a shame not to have that in the bank somewhere, so we can do something with it later on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm like, man, I'm thinking back to like even just, weddings from like pre-pandemic that I'm like, man, I wish I would have had like just more iPhone footage from, because like that would actually be semi useful now. Yeah. And
I think wedding photography allows us to do some of the coolest shit we've probably never thought of. We've gotten to go amazing places. We've gotten to be part of different groups of people and communities that we probably didn't know existed or had access to at some point, And so it's fun to kind of float between those worlds. And it's just a really cool experience that wedding photography gives us. So I'm super grateful for that. And that content is just part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's like so many experiences I've done that I would have never done this in my personal life at all, and it's only because of this, like this job that doesn't even feel like such an easy, like fun job that, it's like, this is incredible.
Do you have any advice for your previous version of yourself that you maybe would have wanted to give yourself at that point in time?
I think if anything, it's like, it's advice I could give current self as well, in terms of just like, don't be afraid just to do, and like go with what you like need to do to further your business and like that sort of stuff. Like, recording behind the scenes stuff or talking to the camera or, whatever, putting out more like education type stuff that like, might feel like common sense almost, but it's us. But then like, if that's coming in front of someone who's like brand new, it's like, oh, that could be super valuable to them. So trying to get over like just those like mental hurdles of fear, essentially. But that would be one thing. And then the other would be to just like, I think just enjoy it. And like, I think not get super caught up in the social media game of like, and in the comparison game of like, that sort of stuff. Like I still experience that from time to time, but I think I have an easier time dealing with it now, where I know that like I have such a large body of work that I am like very, very proud of. And like, there's only one me, there's only, one of each of us and stuff like that. So it's like, I don't need to have two Jordans or two Lilies. Like, it's just like, one is great. And like, I'm always just like stoked on I'm being better at being very happy with like where my work is at and like that sort of stuff.
Do you have anything interesting coming up in the next for this year that you want to share with anyone here?
No, I love your guys' work. It's amazing.